Hey everyone, today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be explaining my video 16 personalities through the eyes of the INFJ because I put a lot of layers into it. Was it because I was terrified of the INFJs and the audience calling me out or not getting their type correctly and I just kind of felt like I needed to make this an even better video than my last ones with all these cryptic messages? Potentially. Is that unpackable? Absolutely, but we're going to just move right along. Obviously, since I started my series through the eyes of the blah blah blah, in which I portray all of the characters through the eyes of the various types, started that series over a year ago at this point. Since then, the videos have kind of escalated in terms of the thought that I put into them. RIP INTJs who were first. Now that we're over a year on, I think of all the cool things I could have done with that video, but no regrets. So with each of the types, I've enjoyed thinking of a particular format or a particular shtick for the video that allows the audience to maybe see the type through a different lens. Obviously, most of these are based on the stereotypes. For instance, I had the swiping format for the ESTP, I had the rhyming format for the ESFJ, I had the crazy green screen effects for both of the NE DOMs. These are things that as I progressed with the series, I realized I was actually really enjoying experimenting with these different formats for the videos. And when it came to the INFJ video, which I was putting off very much just because I was terrified of all of the INFJs in the audience being like, "That's not me." No shade, love you guys. I was kind of overthinking it a little bit. What ended up happening was I came up with the idea to put all of these different layers into the video to really play on the stereotype that INFJs read into everything. So I liked the idea of putting the audience in the position where they would have to read into everything because of all the layers that I'd put in there in order to understand what it might be like to be an INFJ. I don't know if that's what it's actually like. INFJs, feel free to call me out, as you always do. So there are quite a few different layers there. I obviously said at the end of the video, how many layers did you find? Because I wanted to directly tell you guys that I had put in the effort to put in all the different layers. It literally exhausted me. I needed a full 3-day break after I created that video because reading into things that much is not something that I do naturally. Hence the title of my podcast, Literally No Subtext, subtle plug on which I've just released a interview with my INFJ friend Rebecca. So if you want to check out me asking questions to an INFJ, go check that out because I do not understand INFJs. I really, really don't. Love you guys, but I don't understand you. Hands down, the greatest surprise of the reception of the video from you guys was that you guys recognized that I'd put these sneaky numbers in all of the different shots, but you weren't able to crack the code. So I'm going to be explaining that code at the end of this video. So stick around if you want the answer to that code. So here are all of the different layers that I put into my 16 personalities through the eyes of the INFJ video. So first of all, you'll notice that all of the characters had an abstract background. Yes, there was symbolism to that background for each of the characters. I will be explaining those in depth at the end of this video as well. In depth. Obviously, this is something I've done with my characters in the past. For a lot of the sensors, I will put more realistic backgrounds. And for a lot of the intuitives, especially NDOMs, I will put abstract backgrounds. It's just a little 101 lesson on the difference between S's and N's. The second layer was the translucent characters. You'll notice that every character except one was translucent. This was a nod to the stereotype that INFJs read into everyone. Not just that, but that they can see through everyone. The next layer was I put sayings, particularly generic platitudes, on a piece of paper on each of the t-shirts of each of the characters. This was making fun of the fact that INFJs are so deep, but that they constantly are frustrated at how people summarize them as vague platitude using specimens. I have a real-time example of this. If you go and look at my most recent video, 16 personalities making TikToks, you'll see people in the comments getting annoyed at my INFJ TikTok because it was vague and platitude-y. Is this video me just voicing my qualms with INFJs? You be the one to decide. So INFJs are constantly frustrated that they're summarized as vague platitudes. So in this video, I gave all you INFJs vague platitudes on my t-shirt so that you would be forced to have to read into everything that you saw. Just so that you would understand what you're asking of us every time you speak to us in a way that appears a certain way on the surface, but you're not really showing us what's going on underneath. Yes, INFJs, you know that's the truth. And for people like me who don't naturally read subtext, that's really annoying. The next layer was the echoey audio. Every character spoke in a voice that echoed. This was a nod to the stereotype that INFJs are always in their own little dreamy world. The next layer is that all characters were in a simple black t-shirt, which was a nod to the fact that INFJs use inferior SE, so they don't tend to pay attention to physical details. The next layer is one that I did not see anyone in the comments notice, though it is very subtle, so fair enough. I chose to write each of the personality types letters in the Courier font, which is typically a font associated with script writing. This was a nod to the stereotype that INFJs tend to write their own narratives when they speak to people / perceive things in reality. As I'm saying all of these things out loud, I just realize how hard I've roasted you, INFJs, and I'm so sorry. Like, half of me is sorry. The next layer was that the text of each of the personality types also had a drop shadow, which was a nod to INFJs reading into people and being able to see their shadow self as well as what they present on the surface, which is a cool thing and a skill that I wish that I had. The next layer was that the INFJ character was the only one who was not translucent, did not have an abstract background, and did not have a drop shadow on their text. This is both a nod to the stereotype that INFJs show no one who they truly are, that mask that they wear, and that INFJs might find each other less interesting and less mysterious because they are so similar to one another. And I do kind of have a vague theory, classic me making comedy based on vague theories, that we tend to find people of our same type less interesting because they're just predictable to us. There's not a whole level of mystery. That's what I was nodding to. Then there was the door slam, of course, which is self-explanatory. And the final song, which is a remix of the ESTP in the Through the Eyes of the ENFJ video that I created, in which they sang I'm Suppressing Wounds. The song was remixed by Restless Mosaic, and it is a banger of a remix in my opinion. That also was kind of just touching on the stereotype of the INFJs of reading into everyone, and everyone is suppressing wounds and all that jazz. Just a little disclaimer that comedy is fair game. Another layer, of course, was the UK subtitles, in which I had little emojis that symbolized the titles of movies. A lot of you got that. That was a fun extra little game. So now I'm going to explain the backgrounds of the characters in greater detail. For the INTP, there were bookshelves, but they were specifically in grayscale. This was to get at the fact that these people are bookish, but that when talking about literature, there's no real emotionality associated with the INTP's way in which they speak about the literature. It's more the TI intelligence and the TI engagement with literature, which I guess an INFJ would consider to be quite bland or maybe more on the boring side. All speculation. Allegedly, just gonna throw it out there. All of these backgrounds will have something to do with the stereotype and will not have all of the nuance that you INFJs would ideally like in an ideal universe. The I have layers sign is there because INFJs see layers in everyone. The ISFJ had this very aesthetic color palette, which was really just getting at the SI of it all. The don't judge a book by its cover sign was kind of ironic because the ISFJ in this scene is saying you could never be attracted to me, which ironically means that the INFJ would be judging the book by its cover. The ISFP background was going on the stereotype of the anime interest. As an FI Dom, they're very expressive. The INFJ perceives the ISFP potentially, allegedly, to have a plethora of personal emotions, and so this was an indicator of all of the emotions that the ISFP has, and it's in an anime format because that's the stereotype. The time heals all wounds sign is tribute to the idea that ISFPs, FI Doms in general, probably take a long time to be able to process their emotions and are quite private about how they process them, when really I guess an INFJ would just want them to share and get to know them, but ISFPs need time. The ENTP background was a series of icebergs that specifically was zoomed in on so that you just saw the tip of the iceberg and not all of the depth underneath the surface. This was to basically portray the idea that the NI Dom INFJ, when speaking to an NE Dom ENTP, potentially, allegedly might perceive the ENTP to sort of just touch on the surface of multiple different ideas, but not really go fully deeply, like deep dive into any of them. The it's just a matter of time sign is basically getting at the idea that the ENTP can run away from their wounds all that they want and use humor as a defense mechanism, but it's only a matter of time before that catches up with them. The ISTJ just had a blank background because potentially to an INFJ, they are somewhat of a blank canvas onto which they can sort of just project whatever they want. Hence, a second later, when we see the Garden of Love that pops up in the background, the INFJ has decided that the ISTJ is interested in them and secretly in love with them, which is a stereotype that I absolutely love portraying on my channel. I think it's one of the funniest ones. The look deeper sign is ironic because the INFJ is clearly thinking that they're looking deeper by thinking this person loves me, but really they should be looking deeper into who this person actually is. I was kind of getting at the idea that NI Doms and NI users in general, I do this too, I'm not exempt, I'm guilty, can be quite attached to their subjective pattern that they've built, what they believe and feel and intuit to be true, as opposed to what is actually true. Sometimes, allegedly. The ESFJ one, bunch of cakes. All of these cakes are just a signifier that you know, the ESFJ is a very warm person and the INFJ feels cared for by them, which they appreciate. The all for one and one for all sign is obviously a nod of the hat to Effie. The robot in the background, I just loved this idea of a sad robot playing the piano. This is to illustrate the idea that an INFJ might perceive an ENTJ as a robot. Like there's something there, there's something to them, there's depth, there's complexity, but the way that they're portraying themselves in a betrayal to their feelings, perhaps they're suppressing wounds, who knows, is more like a robot. And if they only just dive deeper, they would be able to connect with that feeling. And that's why this robot is playing the piano. They are deeply sad, they are deeply searching, but they won't acknowledge it to themselves. I actually just put that everything happens for a reason because it's one of the most generic platitudes, and I thought ENTJs would be annoyed by that. So really, we are seeing this running theme that the overall goal on my channel is just to completely roast and troll you guys. The ESTP dynamite is self-explanatory. This person, very similar to how the INFJ is perceiving, allegedly, the ENTP. This person is the definition of suppressing their wounds and they're going to explode one day. Hence the sign, eventuality is inevitable, which is not a platitude, I made that up. Also just to kind of poke fun at how redundant and meaningless some platitudes can seem sometimes. The ESTJ hamster wheel, pretty obvious, running around in circles. The idea is that the INFJ perceives the ESTJ as being super busy but running around in circles, not having some greater aim or tapestry that's going on. The good things come to those who wait on their shirt. It's basically the INFJ thinking, gosh, this ESTJ really just needs to slow down. The ESFP has the fireworks in the background because as a Dom SE user, the INFJ with their baby SE probably feels that the ESFP is a lot sometimes, but in a really beautiful way that a lot of people seem to love. You know, they're a party animal. People generally like them. They have good social skills, good people skills. Maybe INFJs admire that or like that or find them a pleasure to be around. Of course, you've got the sign that says all that glitters isn't gold, meaning that nothing is ever what it seems on the surface. Even the ESFP is probably suppressing wounds. Can confirm. The ENFP has a giant pile of garbage in the background that makes no sense seemingly, and you've got a character looking at it being like, how do I tackle this? And that's basically illustrating how the INFJ perceives the life of the ENFP. A broken clock is right twice a day is another nod to the fact that the INFJ can't really understand the scatteredness of the ENFP. That's not to say INFJs don't love ENFPs, but I guess they would have a sort of chaotic way of living their life that an INFJ might not be able to understand, potentially. In the INFJ scene, which I've already explained, the nothing is what it seems sign is just a nod to the INFJ mentality and outlook on life in general. I thought it was apt to put on the fellow INFJ. The brick wall for the ISTP. I was going for the idea that an INFJ might think that an ISTP is a brick wall to talk to, in that they're desperately trying to get into the hidden layers and discover what this person's about and understand this person, but they're not really giving them anything. The there is always subtext sign portrays the same idea of the INFJ trying to understand the subtext, knowing that there is subtext, but just trying to get to it. But the ISTP in actuality is probably like, there's no subtext. I'm showing you who I am. Just let me live my life. Just a periodic disclaimer to say that we're being very general here, and this is a video about my creative choices, not saying that all INFJs are like this. This is actually a bit meta, because this video serves as a 16 personalities through the eyes of the INFJ through the eyes of the ESFP. The INFP, very wholesome and peaceful. Chatting with an INFP just reminds the INFJ of walking through a peaceful forest. It's pleasant, it's lovely. But the INFP is just a little bit floopy and a little bit scattered, and maybe their emotions and their ideas aren't seemingly connected in any way that forms a tapestry. They're sort of just chaotic, similar to the ENFP. But the INFJ can't deny that there's a sense of peace within the INFP that potentially the INFJ envies. They wish they had that peace and security of self in who they are that the INFP has. The INFP is definitely very happy, and the INFJ loves that, but they can't make sense of it. Hence the allusion to mystical creatures like the leprechaun, who I had to add, and I'm sorry if it gave you nightmares. The keep your cards close to the chest is an homage to what I was saying earlier about the ISFP. IFI DOMs keep their cards close to the chest, need their time to process it, perhaps don't share, and that might be something that not irks, but intrigues the INFJ and is unrelatable perhaps. Who knows? Let's find out in the comments. Leave your thoughts. The ENFJ background, let me know if you picked up on this one. That is a lily of the valley flower in the background. Very beautiful, but known for being poisonous. Make of that what you will. The writings on the wall sign basically indicates that the INFJ sees right through the ENFJ. They're quite similar to the ENFJ, and therefore they find the ENFJ quite easy to read. Not necessarily a bad thing. Just a disclaimer, I do not dislike NFJs. The draining of the color throughout the shot is supposed to signify the INFJ's heightened levels of anxiety in this particular social situation that the ENFJ is describing. And then the INTJ has a old looking picture of a vampire on top of a tower and a well. The use of grayscale is similar to what I said about the INTP background, in that the INTJ is not a very emotional person, and so their approach to life, I guess, might seem a bit drained of color compared to how the INFJ approaches life, in that they're using emotions as a predominant judging tool. The vampire is a nod to the vampire stereotype. Don't know if you could tell that there was a well in the background, but the well is to signify the mutual NI, the ability and desire to dive deep into things. The INTJ is more animated than I would usually have this character in my videos, which is supposed to signify the somewhat kindred connection that INTJs and INFJs would have with their mutual NI. And this platitude on the shirt, "Sand lingers, but the sun waits for no one," is one that I made up completely because I use NI as my last function, and therefore it is something that I do not understand. So I thought it was apt to make something up for this character. Okay, now that I've dissected all of the layers in this video, I will now get to the final layer, which is the numbers. You guys may have noticed that there was a number hidden somewhere in each of the frames for each of the types, therefore 16 numbers altogether. Sometimes there were double numbers that I didn't realize until post, when you guys posted in the comments. For instance, the ENTP frame where there was a number 1 on the card. It's not the number that I actually meant you guys to analyze. It was the 7 that was hidden on the iceberg. And the ESTP, which had the numbers ticking on the dynamite, which were not the numbers that I was trying to get you guys to analyze. It was the number that was showing vaguely behind the S. It was an 8. So I like the idea of you guys having something to very coherently put together so that you would know for sure that there were layers that I was putting into this video that you could analyze and speculate over. I thought that this code was going to be relatively easy to crack, but to my knowledge, no one has cracked it. I'm not going to tell you what the code says, but I will tell you that the answer was right there in the credits. The numbers match up with the order of the letters of the names of my patrons in the credits. And there were hints to this. Not only did I post a couple of Instagram hints on my Instagram stories, but on the off chance that you were a particularly observant viewer of mine who had been watching my videos for a while, you may have noticed that the credits for the very first time in a very long time are in a different order. Usually I don't change the order of the names that appear in the credits unless I get more patrons or lose patrons. And I also tried to make this more obvious by not having the thank you to my top tier patrons at the top, because that would have ruined the code as well. So I was hoping that you guys would pick up on this. At the same time, totally fair that you didn't. Why would you? That's not something that a lot of people would regularly pay attention to. But if you were paying attention, or if you did happen to think of the credits and you cracked it, please let me know in the comments, because I don't think I've seen a comment or inbox message on my Instagram of anyone who's cracked the code. And I know people have tried. So that is what I'll leave you with. If you want to go crack that code, go ahead. Can I guarantee that it's going to blow your mind? No. Can I guarantee that you won't be disappointed? No. But it might be something that you're interested in going and doing anyway. For a video that I did not look forward to making because of the potential backlash, I actually really enjoyed making this video. I really enjoyed reading the comments afterwards. I was refreshing the comments constantly just to see if people were working out the different layers. It was good fun. Not something that I could do very regularly because it did drain me having to use that NI so much. But I just wanted to release this video to explain it all while it's still fresh in my mind and before I forget and look back on it in 2 years and go, what? What do these numbers mean? Because apparently I'll be British in 2 years. Anyway, that's the end of today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Did you guys enjoy it? Would you like to see more videos with those hidden messages? I can't guarantee they'll be often, but they may be occasionally. Have I annoyed literally all the INFJs in my audience? If so, I apologize. Please don't unsubscribe. That's all I've got to say to that, although of course you are a free agent and can do what you want. Just a reminder that I have a chat with my INFJ friend of 18 years, Rebecca, in which I ask her lots of questions about the personality type of the INFJ, endeavour to understand them perhaps a little bit more and air out some of my grievances with them if this video has not done that enough. So I look forward to you guys waxing lyrical in the comments. Until then, have a fantastic day, guys. Bye.